Hello class, this is your teacher Mr. McDougall, and in today's Photoshop tutorial I'm going to teach you how to create a dispersion effect where it looks something like this, where we have our subject look like they're being disintegrated, and I'll teach you how to do that in Photoshop. So this is Unit 522 Dispersion Effect. That's what that disintegration is called. So as always, download today's exercise files, open them all up in Photoshop. Here's an example of what I just showed you. You will be creating something that looks like this. So download all the files, open them up in Photoshop, pause the video if you need to do that right now, and then come back to me at this point so I can show you the effect. Alright, let's get started. We're going to do as much non-destructive editing as we possibly can. So again, there are a lot of steps in this tutorial as we go through our last few projects here in Photoshop. They are going to be longer steps, getting complicated, so make sure that you are watching this video at an appropriate speed. Rewind it whenever you need to in case any of the steps are confusing. So the first thing we're going to do is duplicate this background layer twice. We're going to make two copies of the background layer. So Control J and Control J. So we have two copies right here. This first one, we're going to call it copy. So the top layer, I'm going to rename it to just copy. The second one, the one in the middle, is going to be called new background. Again, it is a very good habit to label all of your layers so you know which one is which. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of layers that are all called copies or duplicates, and it starts to get very confusing. So I'm going to label each new layer that we create. Okay, so for what we're going to do first, this top one, this copy, I'm going to hide this one. Remember, this eyeball will hide the layer. It doesn't look like anything's happened because they're all just copies right now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select out the subject on the new background layer. So click on the new background layer, and we're going to come over here to the lasso tool. We're going to use our selection and content aware fill and liquify and some of the things we've been practicing so far in this class. So with the lasso tool, we're going to make a very rough selection around our subject here to remove them. So remember, with the lasso tool, you just click, hold, and drag like that. Go all the way around. Oh, in case you make a mistake, that's fine. As always, just deselect or Control D and try again. So something like this. Watch. Around like that. When you come to the bottom, you can go around the outside like this. See how I'm going outside the border? The line stays within the subject. And then I come back up like this. Whenever you have to go outside the edges of the frame, that's totally fine. And then we just connect back right here. So very loose drawing with the lasso tool. Remember, if you're having trouble with that one, you can always use its cousin, the polygonal lasso tool right here, and that's where you just click and it does connect the dots for you if you find the lasso tool too difficult. So now we're going to remove this guy using content aware fill. So remember, you can go here for the quicker version where this little paint bucket is, or if you deleted this menu, no problem, come up to edit and then fill, and then make sure this is on content aware, and then click OK, and it will remove the subject just like that. It does its best to fill in. The background doesn't really matter because it's just this plain background, but that's okay. Now we need to deselect, so click deselect or hit Control D to deselect everything. And now we're going to come back up here to this copy layer. Let's go to the copy layer, let's turn it back on, click the eyeball, and now we're going to select this guy to mask him out and separate him from the background. So you can use the quick select tool. If you go to the quick select tool, we could select him out like we always do. However, right now I'm going to actually show you a faster way to do it, and I'll explain why I didn't show it to you in the beginning. So actually, with one button, if you have a very clear subject like this, it's super easy to select them out. However, it's not always the case depending on how complicated the subject is. So watch this. If you have the quick selection tool selected, you can come up here to the top where it says select, and then if you come down here, you can click subject. So watch this. If I go to select and then subject, it will scan the image, and boom, it automatically selected my subject for me. It even did a pretty good job with the hair. So with your subject selected, you're going to add a layer mask. Just like that. So now on our layers, here's the original background. If I hide it, we've actually separated the subject from the background. So here's the background by itself, and if I hide this one, I've separated this guy. So now this guy and the background are essentially on two different levels, and the original file is still the same. And again, you might be wondering, why didn't Mr. McDougall teach me about that select subject from the very beginning? And the reason is that you still need to be familiar with the quick select tool because that select subject is not always that great. If we go back here to when we did the my name one, if I do that on this one, let me go to select and then subject again. It will try to figure out at its best where the subject is, but it might not be perfect. So if I look here, I can zoom in. It still didn't, it got the edge of the table and this wire, so I still need to use the quick select tool in this instance to clean this up right here. So even though it selected the majority of it for me, the quick select tool is still needed to make sure that your selections look good. So I want you to be familiar with the quick select tool, because the Photoshop AI and smart stuff is great, but it's not always perfect. You can see I still need to clean up in between right here, so it just depends on the quality of the photo. I still need to clean up the ear and all this part that it messed up. So that's where I can use the quick select tool to fill that in. So that's why you still need to be familiar with the quick select tool to solve any issues that might come up when the automatic thing doesn't work. Okay? But now if you have a nice clear photo like this, pretty often this select subject, or you can go right here to select subject, that will work well if you have a photo like this where the subject is really obvious. And I try to do that by giving you guys pretty easy examples to get started with. Okay, so that's our selected subject, and that was my little spiel on why I brought it up at this point. But you will be able to use it in the future as well. Okay, so now what we're going to do is this copy layer right here, this one, we are going to duplicate this one again. We're going to do a couple more duplicates, so try to keep up on which one. As always, pause or rewind the video if you need to. So this copy layer, we're going to duplicate that one, Control J to duplicate it. And on this one, we are going to apply the mask to it by right-clicking on it. So right-click on this copy and do Apply Layer Mask, like that. See how it looks the same, except now it's got the subject with the dotted line, or the dotted checkerboard background. Okay? On this copy, we're going to rename this one to Dispersion. Just like that. And then we're going to make one more duplicate layer. So on this dispersion one we just did, Control J one more time to copy it again. And this one we're going to rename to Subject. All right, so we have a total of 5 layers right now. Our original background, our background that we separated, the masked out guy, and then these two that we're going to mess around with on our dispersion and our subject. Okay, so first go to this dispersion one, which should be your second from the top layer on your layers panel. Remember to always have your layers panel open so you can see. If yours is collapsed like this, make sure you can see your layers so you can see everything that I see right here. So on this dispersion one, we're going to mess around with the liquify tool again. So come over to filter and let's go to liquify. So with the liquify tool, pick one side of him and we're going to stretch out just one side of him. I'm going to do his right side right here. If you want to do the left, that's fine, but I'm going to stick with the right. So just do it on one half of his body. So make sure you're on the regular forward warp tool. You can make it really big, like you see my brush is really big right here, because we're just going to start pulling him like crazy and stretching him to one side. Just start going nuts, completely cover one side of your screen like this. Make sure you don't see any of the checkerboard stuff. So as you push it out like that, don't get any of the checkerboard. So it completely covers one half of the screen right here. Good. And again, just do one half of his face, leave the other half kind of relatively alone. If you come over a little bit into the other half, that's fine, but do something kind of like this. Now he's looking really good. And then click OK. And you can see what's starting to happen. This is our background, but we need to mask out the top one. But before we do that, so on the dispersion one, the one we just liquefied, you can see if I hide my top layer, you can see the magic liquefy that I just did. So on the dispersion one, we are going to add a layer mask. However, you need to create an inverted mask by holding the Alt button on your keyboard. So hold the Alt button and then click Add a Layer Mask. So you'll get a black mask right here. This is an inverted mask. Okay, now we're going to go to this top one. And this one we're going to click Add a Layer Mask again, except it's going to be a regular one. We're not going to hold the Alt button at all. So come down here and do Layer Mask. So this is what your mask should look like. You should have a white one on the top and a black one right underneath it. Now we're going to start brushing both of these masks to create the dispersion effect. Let's start with this top one. Make sure you have the mask itself selected. So make sure you have the white mask highlighted. Don't start brushing on the little image or else you're just going to paint color on the picture. Make sure you have the white mask selected here. And now we're going to jump over to our brush tool. Go to your brush tool or shortcut B on your keyboard. We're not going to use a regular brush. We're going to go back and use the splatter brush like we used in the previous assignment. So let's go to our brush settings right here. Click on the folder to open up the brush settings. We're going to go to brushes, and we're going to come down to the splatter brushes. So scroll down here through the different folders and the special effects brush right here. Pick one of these splatter brushes right here. I'm going to go with this one. And we just need to make a couple of settings. Go to your brush settings. For this one, we're going to turn off the scattering thing. Turn off scattering, but you can still mess around with the shape dynamics. This one allows you to play around with how it's scattered. Remember, there's no real rhyme or reason to this, but feel free to just play with these sliders and see what happens. Okay, so now we have our cool splatter brush again. We're painting on the white mask, so we need to make sure that our color is set to black. So this needs to be black. I'll click this arrow to switch them. Now I'm brushing with black. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to start hiding parts of this guy by brushing along the side that I liquefied. So if I click and brush a little bit right here. Oh, that's what I forgot to do. I forgot to hide the copy. The reason I'm not seeing anything is because I need to hide the copy layer right here. See this middle one, the one we had the original mask on? Make sure you hide it, and now you'll see the effect right there. Let me go back to brushing this guy. So you can see what's happened as I start brushing. I'm just going to brush one half of him to make him start disappearing. And you can just do small little clicks. You can adjust your brush size as you go to change the size of the pieces that get removed. Make it a little smaller. I'm just going to start brushing this half, making it look like this half is starting to disintegrate. There we go. That's looking cool. Small little brush strokes. You can see each time I change my brush stroke, the splatter randomizes. Alright, so that's looking good. We're just doing this one half. Again, do the same half that you liquefied. Now we're going to do the exact opposite on the other mask. Click on the black mask right here. Click on this one. And now we just need to switch to white, because now we're painting white on the black mask. And this one we're going to do small little clicks over here. And now it's making the liquefy part come back. So again, change your brush size. Do small little clicks like this. Don't overdo it. You don't want to see the liquefy strokes. We just want to click it a little bit, changing your brush size as you go. Make it pretty big a couple times, make it pretty small a couple times, and you'll see the different effects as the guy looks like he is disintegrating. Just like that. And that is the dispersion effect. So now it looks like Thanos snapped and this guy is starting to disintegrate. So as you may have guessed, this is your first exercise file. I want you to practice the exact same thing on the remaining exercise files. Disintegrate this guy, and then disintegrate this guy as well. You're gonna make all of these guys start disappearing using the exact same steps that I just went over. So as you go through each one, just rewind this video to remember all of the steps. Do it on all 4 of these practice files. Okay? So have fun. As always, take your screenshots, turn them in here, and I can't wait to see what you create. As always, if you have questions or need any help, please let me know.